It is time for another UFC, and also we're going to talk about the one championship card on Prime that happened. But before that, you know, when you watch Mio anime, you're always gonna get Mio's random, stupid, uh, stream of thought, consciousness on some random thing going on in MMA. And two things today. Two things. Number one, Luke Rockhold gave an interview talking about how the UFC was better under the Fertitas. That there was that all the things that afflict fighter pay and so on weren't there. Not quite in that totalitarian of a standpoint, but I'm not really sure how to put this into words. That it was that the fighters had more, and I think that that's entirely untrue. Now that might be true for Luke Rockhold. There's a possibility that Fertitas really took care of him behind the scenes and made things happen. And at the time, there was a reason that the backdoor deals would be in play that a lot of people like to try to reference as proof. The classic you don't know what the fighters make because there's backdoor deals and there's locker room bonuses and so on, which the Fertitta is allowed to propagate and exist through most of the UFC history. The rumor of that. Now, when the Fertittas were in charge, that might actually have been the case because when the Fertittas were in charge, when the company was profitable, when the company was not profitable, they had to fight with other promotions for talent, so they had actual competition. And then by the time that things had become non-competitive, the UFC had won the war with Pride, UFC had won the war with Strikeforce, and so on. They were looking to sell. So being able to present lower costs officially while keeping fighters happier actually had a purpose. Whereas now, there really is no purpose for the locker room bonuses. But what I'm really getting at here is that this whole line of thought has led to people giving the Fertittas like tons of credit as being like the good guys of MMA. Not really, because everything that we're complaining about in regards to fighter pay today, fighter rights today, are things that they created. The lack of pensions, the lack of health care in some instances, the the um the revenue share being at about 20%. These are all products of the UFC under the Fertittas. It's just that I think William Morris, aka Endeavor, is simply more by the book about it because it's an independently traded company, or it's traded company now. There are stockholders, there are shareholders that need the actual numbers. Is probably brought the end of the behind closed doors financial dealings because they want that to be recognized as an expense to make more profit and therefore give more to the shareholders. Anyways, that's all I had. The rest of it was pretty good. Like Rockhold had like some good points, but I do think he's rose colored glasses about the Fertittas, or the Fertittas did actually like him, and they really supported him. And it seems like that might have been the case because he seems to think Dana White. He seems to think Dana White was against him. Fertittas were for him, and that is his take on the dynamic. And the other thing is Darren Till's in legal trouble again. And that has brought out, like, I don't know, the weird takes about Darren Till being an elite fighter that I've never really understood. I've never grasped what to talk about when it comes to Darren Till. And this is not me saying Darren Till is a bad fighter, or that Darren Till doesn't deserve to be ranked, or that Darren Till doesn't deserve a title shot when he got it against Tyron Woodley. But very much more that I've never understood the elite take on him. And you could be a fan of him without him being elite. I think Paddy Pimblett fans actually have mastered that. Where when you see Paddy Pimblett fans going crazy, they talk about the charisma, they talk about the entertaining value, they talk about he's a good action fighter. They talk about things that are all either entirely subjective or true. The entertainment part is subjective. You don't have to like Paddy Pimblett's bit, but if you like Paddy Pimblett's bit, you like Paddy Pimblett's bit. It's entertaining you. And he is a reasonably exciting fighter in the cage. He is. There are things about him that are good, but there are things about him that will probably limit him well before the title. Or being like an even, probably not even a top 10 fighter. And they seem to be behind that. But like Darren Till fans seem to believe that he is very much. It's like Sean O'Malley fans. It's not that you're a fan of the fighter. It's not that everyone else is a hater. It's that I don't fully understand the reality that you glimpse the sport through. I don't. So I don't know. If you're a Darren Till fan, please look me up and let's talk, because what I'm talking about is like there was a whole thread going on about Darren Till would beat 90% of Glory kickboxers. You mean Darren Till, the guy who got outstruck by Masvidal? You mean Darren Till, the guy whose high watermark from a striking standpoint is beating Donald Cerrone, a guy a weight class to 2 weight classes smaller than him? And it was a knack for starting really, really slowly, coming out cold, as it were. Let's get to the fights. So, one championship had their fight card, and I wouldn't say anything really was surprising. I will say I lost 2 fights. I picked Yuri Lapkus to win. He didn't win. And I picked Mauro Cirilli. I don't know why I have a hard time with that name. But I picked him to win, and he didn't win. But the way that they lost was very, very much how they were going to lose if they were going to lose. Like, Sebastian Cadstrom, or Cadistrom. It's Cadistrom. Cadistrom will either knock you out or he will lose. That's his gimmick. That's been his gimmick for quite some time. I don't want to say Derek Lewis, because I feel like the comparison is overused. Melvin Gillard, maybe? Or maybe something akin to how many guys have honestly gone on to have legendary careers needing knockouts to win and not really having a secondary way of winning? It's actually a lot less than you'd think. But yeah, Melvin Gillard, Derek Lewis type thing, where like he hits really, really hard. He's got that. He knows how to apply his power, but the depth of his game kind of does fall apart. And it was. Lapkus did take him down. Lapkus was winning up until getting knocked out. So nothing shocking, nothing perspective changing, but he did get the win over Lapkus. And the other one was Amir Ali Akbari taking down Mauro and pounding him out. And again, if he was going to win, that was the way he was going to win. I don't think it changes my concerns, my limitation thoughts on Ali Akbari, which is I still don't think he necessarily will keep up a very high pace for very long. And I still think that there are significant defensive holes in his striking game that at heavyweight are going to get him knocked out, because he has oddly placed confidence in his striking. It's one thing to be the John Fitch of striking, where striking is a bad idea, and you're going to pressure, and you're going to hustle, and you're going to do everything possible to make this a grappling-centric fight. Ali Akbari really doesn't have that. Like, he has Olympic wrestling, world champion pedigree wrestling. So when he does try to wrestle, it's pretty damn effective. But at the same time, he does like to strike. He does like to throw hands. And that's almost always a bad idea for him. But he got it done here. Marcos Buchecha Almeida got a heel hook on Kirogoshenko. That went easier than I thought. Harada also won her fight, although that was way harder than I thought it was going to be. And of course, the crown jewel, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson against Adriano Moraes, went to Johnson. But I wouldn't say that the trilogy is uninteresting, because the fear for some after this fight was that Mighty Mouse Johnson winning the rematch, being a rematch guy, being a guy who you could probably rely upon to make adjustments more so than you can rely upon Moraes to make adjustments, was going to find the magic bullet here, and then we were going to end up having to get a third fight that wasn't going to be all that interesting. I think it'll be plenty interesting, because I don't think he found the magic bullet to beating Moraes, because Moraes still hurt him, still took him down, and is still huge. I mean, that is essentially the I guess the unsolvable problem is Moraes is super huge and very imposing. And as a result, he got a lot of work done, got knocked out with a big flying knee, and knee strikes have defined this whole thing. The one who lands a better knee strike will win. That's an oversimplification, of course, but he did find some ideas to pressure better and to handle Moraes' length better. It was a better fight. It was a better fight, but it did look a lot like the first fight, just without the early finish. It went later, and Mighty Mouse got the job done. So I mean, I look forward to a trilogy match between the two. There's nothing else I'm really all that interested in seeing Demetrius Johnson do in one. So the only other fighter they have on contract that I think is particularly intriguing is like Jared Brooks, who was a guy the UFC let go after he lost to Jose Torres and Davidson Figueiredo. He knocked himself out slamming Torres and lost a split decision to Figueiredo, and is fighting in their strawweight division. He's a flyweight size guy, but because of one's weird weigh-in policies, which I'm not overly convinced are a good idea. Like I'm fundamentally pro limiting weight cutting in MMA. I am. I think it often doesn't really actually play a big role in the in-cage product, because you usually get two people who are cutting the same level of weight. And I don't have numbers to back that up, because we get the day before weigh-in, and then we get to visually look at them in the cage, and they'll talk about like how much they cut down from. But at the same time, like, do you believe it? Like, because supposedly Khabib Nurmagomedov claimed that he cuts from about 170. No way is that the figure that he cuts from. And actually, there was a conversation about this with people declaring Khabib a weight bully, but they're behind Charles Oliveira, who cuts down from more. I think the figure they stated was 183 for Charles. I'd have to dig back. There probably is a figure for Charles, because of course California releases these figures, and I'm pretty sure Charles has fought in California since they started releasing hydrated weight. It'd be interesting to see what it is, because it's hard to believe it'd be 180 something, because Charles really shouldn't have been at featherweight, but he was at featherweight and he did make the weight a little bit. So this suggests to me that he's not on that huge of an end, and he never seems that big. Like, he's tall, but he never seems that big, whereas Khabib seems like a monster at times. I'm not really going to talk about what one's going to do with the results after this whole thing, because I have no idea what one is doing at any given time. They are doing the whole like 50 G's from Chatri right to your bank account, which I mean, it's catchy. And it is legitimately probably better than the UFC model, which is 50 G's, Dana. But they're both annoying and they're both stupid, and they both point to a fundamental flaw here. Now, I will say one probably actually does not make the money they claim they make. Most people are pretty much of the opinion that it is a money laundering scheme, and that's really all it is. in terms of the finances. And it's probably why they're moving to the Cayman Islands to be their quote-unquote home base and where their finances will be reviewed. It's never a great sign when you're dealing with a company and they are based in the Cayman Islands. That's an economic 101 tip for y'all. So I'm not going to really talk about matchups that go forward on that, but it was a good card. And despite the fact that I have a lot of problems with one, a legitimate boatload of problems, the actual fights are not necessarily amongst them. They're fun, and when they're not making up rules where they change things on the fly to help out their evolved talent, it's a pretty fun time to watch. All right, so let us talk about this UFC Paris card. Now that I've blabbered on for like 15 minutes, not a bad fight card. The interesting thing probably is that a lot of these fights feel like two true outcome fights, as opposed to anything like really being interesting answered. The fighter I'm going to pick is probably going to win. Surprise. And the fighter that I'm picking to lose has a path to victory. Has a definitive path to victory, but it's a path to victory that they have to pull off, and they don't really have another one. And there's also been just some weird takes going on about this card. Specifically the Whittaker-Vettori fight. We're going to get into it. Like there is some weird thoughts going on about that fight on social media in the MMA sphere. But let us talk about the main event fight. The interim title fight that's not an interim title fight, essentially, because they have, I guess, Stipe Miocic, John Jones, and Francis Ngannou to sort out at the top of this division. This division's in a weird place. Cyril Gane, minus 550 favorite against Tai Tuivasa, plus 420. I'm going to say some nice things about Tai Tuivasa here because I'm a big fan. I'm a big booster of Tai Tuivasa. I think he's a fantastic personality. Seems like a dude you want to hang around with in a big way. Very entertaining. Very much in that Paddy Pimblett kind of mold where his fans are do not bug me in any way because they seem to have a grasp on reality but want to cheer for the big man. That's fine. And Tuivasa has excellent power. He has surprising athletic ability. Kind of like a poor man's Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt was way more explosive and way better at changing up his speed than Tai Tuivasa is. Tuivasa is going to come at you at relatively the same speed. He does attack low with low kicks. He does throw in combination. He hits people off the clinch. He will throw counters, and they're pretty nice, actually, for heavyweight. But this is the problem. At the end of the day, we have yet to see somebody have prolonged striking success against Cyril Gane, and that includes some of the best strikers, or at least the most scary strikers, in the heavyweight division. That's Francis Ngannou. That's Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That's did he fight Volkov? I want to say he fought Volkov. I could be wrong on that. He fought Derek Lewis. I do remember that. Yeah, he did fight Volkov and Junior Dos Santos. And not for nothing, Tanner Boser is kind of a way less dangerous version of what Tai tends to try to do. And he beat him. And that's the problem is I think without a consistent wrestling attack, I don't really know how you beat Cyril Gane. I really don't. Because the only guy who did it was Francis, largely on the basis of wrestling. And it's not that Cyril's unbeatable, because I don't think he's that hard to get down. But there are surprisingly few takedown artists in the division. Like, surprisingly few. Like, a matchup with Stipe and him, or John Jones and him, or heck, we're going to go way down here, Sergey Spivak and him, actually would be something I would have a little bit of pause about actually picking him without reservation. But if you're going to just strike with him, and Tai Tuivasa just strikes with everyone, I have to go with Cyril Gane's defensive acumen, the fact that he's evasive, the fact that he has probably the best footwork in the division. He blends things really well. He doesn't have the problem of tough man ego. He's willing to have that boring fight to stay on the outside, to stay safe. He is, I think, a fair bit taller. Apparently only 2 inches, but he does have 8 inches of reach. Tuivasa's only got a 75-inch reach. It's 6'2". That's interesting. I just don't see it. Now, again, can Tuivasa win? Yes, this is heavyweight. Anyone getting knocked out at heavyweight is not a surprise. Absolutely no one getting knocked out at heavyweight is a surprise. Tuivasa's got the power. Gane is not some unhurtable golem, but he's going to have to dash a long, long distance to get inside to where he lands power. And I think he just gets punished for doing that. I think he gets punished a lot. So I got Ciryl Gane by a late TKO. Mostly because I think he's not going to go for the kill until he feels comfortable. So I think we're going to get like 2 rounds of him just like putting the little chisels into the wall that is tied to Tuivasa and taking it apart slowly, piece by piece, opening up the gaps, and then maybe stopping him like the 3rd or 4th round. That is my takeaway. But it's a 2 true outcome fight. It's like either Gane is going to kind of style on him, or Tuivasa is going to knock him out in very sudden, violent fashion. And that's kind of like the only 2 ways the fight goes. Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori. What is the betting line on this one at this point? Has it moved? It has moved a little bit. Minus 225 on Whittaker, plus 185 on Marvin Vettori. Same height, relatively same reach. Apparently there's a 1/2 inch reach advantage for Vettori. I would have thought it would be more. I always think Vettori is taller than 6 feet tall. I don't know why. Because he's built like a brick shithouse. Like the idea that he could be at middleweight and be more than 6 feet tall with that build is actually kind of weird. This feels like a fight in which Robert Whittaker has been kind of building a style to deal with this for an entire career. Because Vettori is... I don't want to downplay Vettori. I really don't, because I think a lot of people are. Like, a lot of people are of the opinion Vettori offers nothing in this fight. The thing with Vettori, though, is that he offers predictability. He's going to be moving forward. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to be open. He's got some sneaky, like, good boxing, but there's not a lot of power behind it. That's the thing that is really weird, because there are a lot of people betting huge money, at least, like, verbally, that Marvin Vettori is going to just absolutely rip through Robert Whittaker and hurt him badly. And they're basically pointing out, like, Yoel Romero hurting him and so on. I'm like, Marvin Vettori, for all the strength he has, all the explosiveness he has, should actually be able to hit really hard. But he doesn't. The mechanics of his punches take power off of his strikes all the time. His weight positioning, it's wrong. The first punch is the only one that really has anything on it. Everything after that in a combination tends to be arm punches. And most importantly, like, Vettori has not stopped anyone in the UFC with strikes. And the person he, I guess, kind of hurt the most was, like, Carl Roberson. And Carl Roberson has all kinds of problems with just mental toughness. I don't understand it. Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker has been developing a style to deal with a forward pressure wrestle boxer, because when he was coming up and, like, kind of making his bones, that was what he was probably going to run into a fair bit, because Chris Weidman was champion, Luke Rockhold was around, etc. And he should be ready for this. He should be able to check the aggression with the calf kick. He should be able to land counters. Because while Vittori is pretty good defensively, he will overextend. It's the same reason he doesn't have power. Like he'll overextend with his weight. He'll also overextend with his openings when he's throwing prolonged combinations. So I don't think Whitaker will finish him because Vittori is insanely durable, amazingly durable. The power of rage compels him to be the toughest man in the room. But I don't. I mean, I guess I do know what a Vittori win looks like. It's Vittori going out there and imposing a wrestling game on Whitaker. But no one's really been able to do that in at least a very, very, very long time. This next fight, I don't understand its positioning on the card, and that is Alessio Di Chirico versus Roman Kopylov. Now, mind you, I'm going off Tapology. Maybe this is not going to be the third fight from the top. The reason I don't understand this fight, and it's a near even bet at minus 110 apiece, and to be honest, I think that's appropriate. Di Chirico is 1-4 in his last 5. Now, in respect, he did beat Joaquin Buckley, who is down on the card, but is the fight I would put here. And he's fighting 0-2 Roman Kopylov. There is no ranking at stake here. There is a ranking in the Imavov versus Buckley fight. There is no hometown fighter here because this is Rome, Italy versus Novosibirsk, Russia in this guide. So I don't know why this is here. And it's gonna be a weird fight because I think anything Alessio Di Chirico is in is weird. Kopylov is a more reliable source of entertaining fights because he's kind of a volume kickboxer kind of guy. But again, he did lose to Karl Roberson. He did lose to Albert Duraev. He's also got a boatload of canceled fights to his name. Got injured and pulled out against Krzysztof Yatko. Okay, that one was for coronavirus. That was just a canceled event. Withdrew against Tom Breeze. Why would you book him against Tom Breeze? Two guys guaranteed to have a fight fall apart. Had visa issues with the Sam Alvey fight. Withdrew against Jordan Wright. So just on a professional level, I don't know why you would rely on Kopylov for a main card fight right now. 0-2 in the UFC. Doesn't have some huge name behind him. And has pulled out of 1, 2, 3, 4 fights with the UFC over the course of 3 years. I don't know. Bizarre on all grounds, I guess. This is probably the most interesting fight on the card in the sense of I really honestly don't know what's going to happen. I know what Kopylov's going to do, but Di Chirico is just such a weird fighter, and he's a guy who seems to be trying to find himself, probably because, again, he's 1-4 in his last 5, dating back to losing to Kevin Holland and Mahmoud Murdoch. Zach Cummins getting knocked out by Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and yes, randomly in there, knocking out Joaquin Buckley in the first round. By the way, this goes to my whole knockouts being overvalued thing. You think, oh, he knocked out Buckley. He's got to be a really good fighter. He's going to go on to do so many good things. Nope. and it's not like that derailed Buckley because Buckley's won 3 straight since then. He, granted, against Antonio Arroyo and Abdul Razak Al Hassan in a fight that was way closer than it needed to be, which, by the way, Razak Al Hassan defeated Di Chirico, so MMA math. And then the victory over Albert Duraev, who beat Kopylov. Again, I'm just so confused by this fight. Prediction-wise, I'm going with Di Chirico because I've seen him win at a UFC level. Even if I'm not sold that it's replicable or that his style makes any remote sense. He's got some nice power. He's got some ability to surprise people. He can be made relatively low output, but I think that Kopylov's style is a style that is going to bring a counter striker or a low output striker out of their shell to try to compete with him. And I think at some point Di Chirico will hurt him enough throughout the fight to pick up a decision win. So that's what I'm going with. Nazarek Hakparast versus John McDessie. Now, I'm going to say this right now. Supposedly there's like a 2-inch height disadvantage here and 4 inches of reach. And I firmly believe that there's more than that. Hakparast is a minus 225 favorite. I think that's a little bit too wide for a guy who's on a bit of a slouch. And plus 190 for John McDessie. Essentially what I'm picking here is the younger man, though. This is a 27-year-old Hakparast versus a 37-year-old McDessie at a weight class where you age out and are considered old by about 32. Additionally, McDessie's style has always been limited by the fact that he is short, but is like very much a range kind of striker guy who wants to incorporate a kicking game and some flashy stuff. And it's worked. It's somehow worked. But I think that Hakparast can do a little bit of everything. He is a guy who has a takedown game. He is a guy who has a pressure wrestling game, or striking game, pardon me. He is a guy who's going to have a massive reach advantage. He is athletic. Like, Hakparast is very athletic. He's from the school of, like, Kelvin Gastelum athleticism. And I don't know if McDessie can stop everything. I think McDessie at this point in his career is a guy who, if you just want to have a kickboxing match with him, he can probably win that. If you just want to wrestle him, he can probably shut that down. But I don't foresee him being able to shut down at all. And I'm taking Hakparast by decision. This could bite me because Hakparast seems to be in a really bad mental position where, like, he seems to find no answers on the fly. As soon as, like, he has his game plan coming into the fight, and as soon as that encounters problems, he's had some significant problems and has ended up losing. So we'll see. But it's been against better fighters than McDessie, at least at this point in their career. William Gomez, I think is how it's said, versus Yarno Aarons. Gomez has a lot of really good building blocks. This is also another one that I'm like not really sure why this is on the main card, because it's 2 debuting fighters, and it's not like they're like can't miss prospects. Like, Gomez has a lot of like excitement factor, but has also lost twice to some sub UFC competition, and every time he's kind of faced somebody who doesn't fold instantly. Sorry, I had to snort there. Not cocaine. He's not really looked as good. Anyways, I'm picking Gomez, who's the minus 220 favorite against plus 180. I like a lot of what I see. Like, there's a lot of physical gifts to him. He's confident. When he's on his game and he's not getting kind of lazy, he can be very evasive, very effective at range, oppressive in the clinch. Has some actually legitimately scary ground and pound. Like, he's a man who I don't think the standard way of just trying to lock him down prevents him from hitting you on the ground. He does a very good job of that. But, like, the thing I do sense about him, in just how he talks, how he has thoughts about the fights, is that this is a guy who really believes that he is destined for greatness. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Because I think most fighters think they're destined for that. I think that is what drives them to become potentially great fighters, is to take that athletic ability and pair it with an insane level of confidence. But it shows in his fights sometimes where he's just kind of very dismissive about his opponents. Very, very dismissive. And kind of, like I said, kind of becomes lazy. The evasion goes away. The footwork gets... sloppy is the wrong word. Simple, maybe. Lacking in sharpness. Dull. There we go. That's the word I'm going to use. Dull. And Aarons is a guy who does have a little bit of creativity, a little bit of power, and a little bit of a counter-striking game. And I could see him catching him at some point. That being said, while I think that's going to happen to Mr. Gomez at some point, he is going to get caught. I don't think it's this day. I think he TKOs Aaron's because there's a lot about Aaron's that allows for bullying, athletic style bullying in the clinch and in the pocket, and without really an answer. I just think that he probably has just a physical limitation that is probably going to limit him to being like a kind of fun action fighter fight in the short term in the UFC. But there is that. Oh yeah, by the way, on the Cyril Gane fight, Cyril Gane let it slip in the or Tai Tuivasa let it slip that he's been paying for his fights or his flights this whole time. Which to me, okay, here's the thing: if you believe that the fighters should pay for their own flights, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I don't actually. Again, this goes back to this whole concept of independent contractor. If I want to fly somewhere and I'm an independent contractor, I do have to pay for it. But at the same time, I'd also be billing more. The cost of my independent contractor would be referencing that, and I don't think it does with UFC fighters. I think that Cyril Gane doesn't have like Tai Tuivasa doesn't have a higher transport pay than Cyril Gane does, despite the fact that he's coming from Australia to France. Something to keep in mind. There should be differences in the pay in a nutshell. Moving on down to the next fight. Are we on the prelim card yet? No, we're on. This is the last main card fight, and it should be on the main card. Charles Jourdain, Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood coming up to 145. He did last fight, but I think this is the proper rubber to the road because like Charles Rosa. Was it Charles Rosa or Boston Salmon he was fighting? Charles Rosa. I don't know why I mixed those two up. Charles Rosa really isn't a test in that regard because Charles Rosa is like a guy who I think we've soundly proven to be not UFC caliber. Now Charles Jourdain, 3 inches taller. Apparently they have the same reach, but I don't believe it. Is a guy who's had success at featherweight. He's a guy who should be riding a 3-fight winning streak because he should have beaten Shane Burgos. Saying it now. Beat Lando Venata, beat Andre Ul. Did lose to Julian Erosa, but Julian Erosa is a tall, unique challenge. That split draw with Josh Kolobau looks a lot better as time goes on. And let's just get into this fight. Jourdain comes in as the favorite, minus 140 to plus 115 for Wood. I think that's appropriate. I could definitely see Wood winning. Wood is a evasive striker, and I think featherweight is probably going to work better for him because I think it's going to work better and it's going to work worse. I think on one hand, it's going to work better because I think his speed is going to look way more fascinating, way more decisive at featherweight than it was at bantamweight. I do also think that he is going to probably have a little bit of problem with wrestlers because Wood at 135 was kind of used to being able to do some things in the clinch that I don't really think are going to be present in his fights a weight class up. I am picking Jourdain because I think he's crazy. I think that craziness turns into aggression. I think he's willing to go to a wrestling game when he has to. I think he's willing to make a lot of different adjustments and throw a lot of different things at Wood. And I'm not sure that Wood is ready for it. This is one of those fights that, like, if this fight were to happen a year from now, I probably would reverse my thoughts because I would think Wood is more acclimated to the division. I just don't think he is right now. But he is fast enough that, like, he could do a lot of what Josh Kulabau did and a lot of what Andre Fili did. Where, like, just stay at range. But, like, that's the thing is, those guys, not so much Kulabau, but specifically Fili, had a lot of reach to work with against Jourdain, and Wood doesn't. So, like, can I really pick a guy who, again, supposedly has the same reach, and I just refuse to believe it. To work an outside kickboxing game against Jordan, who is a guy who will plow forward with reckless abandon and try to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at you, to actually make that work, to actually matador the bull. Because a lot of what has beaten Jordan has been the ability to also just kind of out physique him. This is it feels like a way more interesting version of the Andre Uhl short dead fight, and Jordan won that comfortably. So yeah, I'm going with Jordan by decision. I think it's gonna be. Ooh, excuse me. I have some random hiccups going on here, but I think my stomach is like, feed me. We need to go get food. I am gonna go get food after this. I think it's gonna be interesting. Super fun action fight. Anytime Jordan fights, it's worth your time. This is my pick for probably fight of the night on the main card. Even though I think Whitaker Vittori is really interesting. GT Rico and Kopilov could be really interesting, but this is the one that I think is guaranteed fire. Dustin Stolfus versus, here we go, Abu Supanyan Magomedov. Actually, that's not so bad. I was expecting that to be worse. This is Magomedov's debut in the UFC, I do believe. I could be mistaken. No, this is his debut. Coming over from, one round in KSW. He's done the PFL thing. He's done Superior FC, Final Fight, all that noise and all that fun. Good grappler. Guy who pulls off like some interesting submissions that you don't see a lot of. Kimura wins and stuff. Dustin Stolfus, kind of the same type of grappler, honestly. I don't really know what to make of this fight because it's one of those things where, like, Magomedov's been way more successful as a grappler, but at the same time, Stolfus probably has fought a higher level of competition throughout his career. He's been in the UFC for a hot minute now, but at the same time, his only win is Dwight Grant, and I don't really rate Dwight Grant. I think that Stolfus' loss to Dwight Grant had a lot to do with just Dwight Grant being Dwight Grant, unfortunately. I am picking Magomedov by decision, but I think the odds are too wide here because they got Magomedov is a minus 270 favorite to a plus 220, which I think makes him the largest favorite outside of Gane on the card. He might legitimately be a bigger favorite than Whitaker is. Let me have a look at this. He is. He's a bigger favorite than Whitaker is. Bigger favorite than Haqparast. Bigger favorite than Gomez, I think. Yeah. He is the second largest favorite up until this point on the card. Ferrasian versus I forget if it's Michael or Michelle Figlak. Poland sometimes does both, but I think it's or it could be Mike Howell, actually. I'm going to go with Mike Howell because I'm pretty sure that's the Polish version. So here's the thing about Ferrasian. I have never been able to get a handle on Ferrasian's success because he looks so uncomfortable in the cage. He really does. There are some obvious things. He has a 75-inch reach at lightweight. He's 6'1", pretty huge reach, pretty huge guy for the weight class. He's fighting a guy who's 5'10", doesn't have a reach number listed here. Will be shorter in reach. I think probably guarantee. I'd imagine that Figlak's maybe like 70 inches. And but like I said, and it's not that it's led to the losses because he's beaten Luigi Vendramini, he's beaten Jamie Malarkey, who's a fighter I do rank as a really good test. He didn't really lose all that convincingly against Don Madge, honestly. He did lose very convincingly against Terrence McKinney. He's done fine. He's 2-2 in the UFC, but like I can't. Every time I watch him fight, I can't take it seriously. I really can't. I can appreciate like the smooth technique he has as a striker. I can appreciate the counterpunching he has, which is pretty good. I can appreciate the fact that he's got good footwork. I can appreciate the fact that he adapts to the opponent in front of him, that he finds solutions to things as fights go on. But my God, does he just look so uncomfortable whenever the fight is brought to him? Like, is it an act? Is it an act that like he's suckering people in? I don't know. I don't get it. I'm picking Figlak. Just because of that. Figlak's an undefeated, interesting prospect. Pretty creative striker, actually. Throws in pretty good high volume. Changes up his combinations, his entries a lot. I like that. He mixes in a persistent takedown threat. Will clinch. Will shoot. Will scramble really aggressively for back control, both in a standing position and on the mat. Is actually pretty hard to himself take down, which I don't think is really all that important because Ziam is pretty much a straight kickboxer. It's just that I don't really think that Ziam's going to handle a combination layered attack where the guy is throwing punches and looking for the takedown. Because, I mean, when Vendramini was able to do that, he had success. When Madge was able to do that, he had success. When McKinney did that, he killed him. That Malarkey fight, was good. Like beating Jamie Malarkey is no joke. But I think it was also a stylistic matchup that did not accelerate the fact that Ziam doesn't feel comfortable when someone is pressing him with a clinch game, with a wrestling game. And even though he's actually fairly good at stopping it, he's got good clinch defense, he's got good takedown defense. It just puts him off. Like, it doesn't seem like he like I said, he seems uncomfortable, he seems unhappy, and it's kind of almost like a Robbie Lawler type situation, where if you watch Robbie Lawler for the last couple of years, granted there's physical fade on top of this, but a big part of his problem has just been like, I don't want to fight the takedown off anymore. I don't want to do this. And like that is Fares Ziam, and I don't think Figlak's gonna go away. I don't think Figlak's gonna let him sit out at range. And that's why I got that feel. And Figlak is the favorite. I'm actually a little surprised by that. He's minus 200 when I last looked. Is he still minus 200? Let's get a look here. Yeah, minus 200 to plus 165. Not much movement on that line. I looked like 48 hours ago, so I'm not expecting huge movements, and we haven't seen any. Nasruddin Imanov versus Joaquin Buckley. Why is this not on the main card? Because Imanov is actually a ranked UFC fighter, and he's on the undercard, and he's a Frenchman, and this fight is in Paris, France. I don't get it. He's the favorite here, minus 270 to plus 225 over Buckley. Makes sense. He does have 5 inches of height, but apparently a 1-inch reach disadvantage. I think that's because Buckley is incredibly wide at the shoulders. I think this is one of those classic examples of like the fingertip to fingertip reach just not being a reliable indicator of actual effective reach, because you have a dude who is sub 6 feet tall, 5'10", a generous 5'10", supposedly having a reach shorter than a guy who is 6'3", not overly lanky. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Imamov is not a guy who has hugely long arms, but like they're long enough. And somehow Buckley has a reach advantage. And I mean, Buckley does have long arms for his height, but like a lot of that is torso. Oh my Lord. Could Buckley win this fight? Absolutely. Buckley has creativity, explosiveness, power for days, hard to take down, hard to control, creative. I think I mentioned that, but I think like a guy who pulled off a ninja knockout kick probably deserves creative thrown out a couple of times. He does actually have an offensive wrestling game. He does seem to be getting better training in his situation with Murcielago MMA and Finney Hit Squad. At least that's what he's listed as from. And of course, the Detroit Combat Survival guy, it seems to be working for him. And he's also a guy who promotes fights. I don't understand. I don't understand how this is on the undercard. And I said it on Twitter, and people were coming back like, well, clearly the UFC doesn't think so. I'm like, the UFC doesn't think that a guy who is ranked and a guy who's probably just outside the rankings in Buckley and who gave them a highlight reel kick that they will be showing for the next century on highlight reels doesn't deserve a main card spot. That's just more indictment of like the UFC is like fight promoters. I don't under. It almost ruins the card. It almost ruins the card for me that like possibly one of the most exciting fights on the night because Buckley will probably try some crazy stuff and Imavov himself is actually pretty exciting. Is down here. I am picking Imavov. I think that he's actually got a pretty well put together game. He's out of the MMA factory. I think they've done an excellent job of him. He utilizes reach very well. He holds up to pressure actually quite well. He's tough. He's taken some nasty shots over time. I think the Edmund Shabazian fight really showed off how good he can be. Like, he made Shabazian look pretty terrible towards the end of the fight and got the Gary Goodrich destroy your skull with elbow with crucifix position. I just think he's a little bit better everywhere. And like, I still think that Buckley's training situation's working for him, but it shouldn't be. And the thing is that he still hasn't beaten anyone that I'm really like the split decision win over Razak Al Hassan, for example, way closer than anyone should be having a decision with Al Hassan with. And I just don't think Albert Duraev or Antonio Arroyo are any good, honestly. And like the flaws of Jordan Wright and Impa Kasanganay are like very, very much out there. Like Imavov is probably better than Di Chirico, I think, for sure. And to be honest, in some ways, might actually just be better than Kevin Holland at middleweight. And those are his 2 losses. So Imavov to just kind of stay a little bit ahead, pick up a decision victory here. Like kind of a guy who's going to have that slight edge on the feet. If they do go to the ground, I trust his grappling to be a little bit more structured than I do Buckley's. And Buckley is going to have to pull something from deep, deep down in the creative well, and he can, to get this win. He's got that silver bullet that he could apply, but I don't want to pick it. Benoit Saint Denis versus Gabriel Miranda. Gabriel Miranda has a hell of a mustache. I'm going to say that right now. I don't think either of these guys really are UFC caliber. I don't think they've beaten anybody who's really UFC caliber. The difference to me is that Miranda has lost to sub-UFC caliber fighters, and Saint Denis' only loss was against Eliza Zaleski, and my God, that grotesque display of reffing in that fight. Hopefully we never see that ref again. But Miranda's fairly willing to grapple with people. Saint Denis is actually pretty good at getting them down. I see him being on top. I see him winning decision. I don't think a submission comes either way, but I think we should see some reasonably fun grappling antics. And who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Because, like, you know, these are both... Saint Denis, 26 years old. Maybe he will grow into being a UFC caliber fighter. I just still don't think he is. But, prove me wrong. Because he doesn't have a loss that proves it. Miranda does. And Miranda's a little bit older as well. So, Benoit Saint Denis. Miranda's also not huge. Saint Denis has fought at welterweight. I think he's stronger than what we tend to think. He is the favorite also in this fight, coming in at a minus 270 plus 220. That's probably a little bit too wide of a line. Khalib Taha versus Christian Quinones. Minus 120 for Taha. Quinones plus 100. I'm picking Taha. Taha has had a rough run in the UFC, obviously. Like, his run in the UFC has been pretty terrible. But at the same time, he's faced really no shortage of really, really, really good fighters. Like, this is a guy who's taken on Sergey Morozov, Ronnie Barcelos, Nandin Narmani, beat Boston Salmon, and lost to Bruno Silva. I believe that was overturned because of, I want to say, PEDs. Was it PEDs? Give me a note. Give me a note. Oh no, he beat Bruno Silva. Right. He tested positive for a failed USADA drug test. Pardon me. The real reason here is when it comes down to it is like Quinones. I like his game. I think it actually maybe has a higher ceiling in the UFC than Taha does, because Taha's 5'5" and like fancies himself kind of like a power striker. At a weight class that I don't think that really works at. Quinones has like pretty evasive footwork. It's clean. I like it. He's evasive. Somehow only 2 inches taller and an inch longer. I don't think that that's actually the case. I think this is another case where the reach is telling Porky Pies. But I don't think he has the experience. And I think that honestly, if your goal is to just have a kickboxing match with Khalid Taha, he's equipped to handle that. And well, I'm taking him by decision. Quinones seems like a really tough dude, defensively responsible. Has been finished both by submission and by punch, but I haven't seen the 2 knockout losses. I did see the submission loss, and it took a lot longer. And as much as Victor Hugo Magradal is not an amazing fighter, he is a guy who like attacks with like a ferocious venom on the ground. Like he's the sort of dude who you're going to lose by submission to, despite having a pretty solid grappling game of your own. So yeah, I'm picking Taha to win, but I don't think he finishes him. And then we bring it up to the end of this fight with or fight card with Stephanie Egger, and I believe it's pronounced Alin Perez. Could be wrong. There are some things I like about Perez. Looks like she has some physical ability, like some reasonably high-end physicality, but she's incredibly untested. Incredibly raw. There's no polish on anything she really does. And she's not really someone who defines the fight. Like if she's been incredibly willing to go into the jaws of a grappler. And Stephanie Egger has an incredibly unfunctional game. I've said this every time she fights. It's tremendously it's a tremendously unreliable game. But at the same time, it is a game that does have a functioning grappling component. And it does have an opportunistic submission game. It does have, the Jessica Rose Clark fight. Good example of this. Catching the armbar, doing her thing. She's won a lot of fights basically like this, where like someone's gonna let her have the fight that she wants, even though she has no way of forcing it on people. And I'm picking her to pick up that submission victory. But she should not be she was 350 on the favorite scale when I last looked, and it's gone down to a more conceivable 285. That's actually our biggest swing here. But she should still not be that big of a favorite, because straight up, this is a girl who got the exact fight that she wanted against Mayra Bueno Silva and wound up getting armbarred, and has no reliable structure on her fight. Nothing. Honestly, nothing. I would not be betting on her in general. Like she's always had fantastic building blocks. Like this deep judo history, big, strong. They always claim she's 5'6". I don't believe them. I don't believe them. Like it seems like I remember watching her fight with Jessica Rose Clark, who I believe is listed at 5'5". And there is definitely way more than 1 inch height disadvantage there. There's a bigger difference there. And I don't know why they understate the height. I don't know why I can't trust the UFC's height measurements. And we never have been able to. Like this goes back to like the Donald Cerrone, Nate Diaz days, where like, totally Cerrone's taller than Nate Diaz. Would you like my glasses? Would you like to check your prescription? I don't know why it's so bad. Like
The reach thing I get because the way they do it just can be misleading. Like, you could have a 75-inch reach and have a shorter effective reach than a guy who has a 72-inch reach. Like, that is possible because we're taking the shoulders into account here, and whatever. It's that I think is just a flaw in mechanism. Whereas with height, I don't get it. Anyways, I am picking Edgar. I do think Perez, if she learns, can be a good UFC caliber fighter. Probably at 135, not 145. Why is this at 145? Because Edgar fights at 135 predominantly. I thought Perez did too. Perez does. Why is this a featherweight fight? Why are there any featherweight fights in the UFC? Maybe it was just a super late booking or something. I'm looking to see if someone pulled out of a fight with. Okay, it is a late booking. Zarafarin was supposed to fight Perez, which actually makes a lot more sense. But at the same time, why was Perez fighting at 145 then? Weird. A lot of fights I was looking forward to have fallen off of this card. Like, for example, Manon Fiorot versus Jessica Andrade would have been really, really fun. That's not on the card. They took Fiorot off the card entirely, and I don't know why. They rescheduled the bout with her and Caitlin Chikagi. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they want to give Chikagi a full training session. I don't know. We lost Cedric Dombe from this card. That was something to look forward to. We lost Danny Henry versus Ricardo Ramos. Apparently both fighters pulled out. That's interesting. We lost Taylor Lapilus. He was supposed to fight Kali Taha. That would have been a fun fight. We lost Mahmoud Muradov off this card, which is a shame because we see so little Mahmoud Muradov. I want to see more of him. And we lost Christos Giagos off this card. He was going to fight Benoit Saint Denis. I don't know if that's really a loss. I don't think that would have been a particularly good fight. But I don't think the replacement fight is necessarily any better. So, I guess that kind of brings it down. So a bit of a curse card. But for a fight night card, it's not bad. It's not bad, and obviously you were always going to have the problem where, with it being in France, you were going to have to, probably avoid people with visa issues. You were probably going to have to avoid people traveling terribly, terribly far because you're going to have a lot of people not wanting to be on the card. But, you got your French heroes on the card. Not as many as you would have liked because you would have really liked Manon Fiorot and Taylor Lapilus on the card. And you really should have Imavov further up. Let's look at the UFC website. Please tell me Tapology is just wrong with the fight location of that. I'm having a hard time getting over it. I'm legitimately having a hard time getting over it. Fight Night Gane versus Tuivasa. Fight card. No, it's on the prelims. And it's not even the featured prelim, according to what Dustin Stolfus versus Magomedov is the featured prelim. Why? It's not even a good fight. Not even a good fight. It really isn't. I don't get it. I don't get it. Oh well. All sources seem to agree. It's an undercard fight. Don't know why. Looks so weird. He's a ranked fighter. He is literally one of just 5 ranked fighters on the card. And he is on the undercard. Whatever. As per usual, there is the link tree down below, or a various symphony of links with the Discord, the YouTube, the various places you can find this podcast, the Twitter. I don't have any other social medias. I don't do the Instagram or whatever. Maybe I should. But anyways, that is the predictions. I hope it's going to be a good card. I hope it's exciting. And I hope MMA has a tremendous day in France, because this has been a long time coming. The UFC in Paris, and it's just a shame that we couldn't get Czech Congo on the card. All right, have a good time, and I'll see you guys. Well, you'll be listening to my voice once again Sunday when it's time to wrap up this card. So there you go. It's an afternoon card too, so that's actually pretty fun. I'm gonna get myself a pizza and enjoy.